For 20 years, I was wondering why people didn't think Beechworth was any good. I tasted wines from Rick at Giaconda, and I tasted wines from Barry and a couple of the guys like that. And I thought, why isn't this place on the map?
Yeah.
This is world class. It's the soil. Basically, there's an extinct volcano out there, and this is all the magma, the lava, whatever, that's just decomposed over millions of years, and that's what it's growing in. A very well-drained medium with lots of minerals in it.
Today, we're fortunate to chat to Keppell Smith, the winemaker and owner of Savaterre. I'm Jason.
And I'm Trent, and we're on an unapologetically unprofessional, unfiltered wine journey. And we're saying here, Jace.
Our saying is drink more, try more, learn more. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Kepp, thank you so much for hosting us here.
On this gorgeous day.
On this gorgeous day. We're just looking at the view. I think you've got something to wake up to every morning.
Well, welcome, boys.
Yeah, really appreciate it. We're going to learn a lot about you, Savaterre. We're going to go through some interesting tastings we're going to have today. But first up, we always go through the wind-up icebreaker questions. So I'm going to hand over to Trent.
We saw in the barrel room there a bunch of bottles at the top.
Mm-hmm.
I like to also just get to know, what is your most memorable wine?
My most memorable wine? Well, I've been very blessed. I've got a lot of very generous friends. But I think probably the most memorable wine I ever had was an Australian bottle. Back in the old days when I worked in finance, I had a great expense account, and wine wasn't that expensive. And I would go to a restaurant owned by Serge Dansu in Sydney, in one of the hotels, because it was just a great place for lunch, and he did a $35 two-course thing. And I'd get to know the guys, and they said to me, like, why are you drinking such terrible wine, Kepp? You got all this money. And I said, well, I don't know any better. Simple as that. And they said, would you like some help? I said, that'd be great. And that was the start of my journey, really. I drank everything. But one day, and I'd ring up at 10 o'clock, so I'm coming to lunch at 1, open something so it's got time to breathe. If I don't make it because the market goes crazy, you guys can drink it, just fax me. Remember faxes?
Yeah.
Fax me the bill, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't make it a lot. So that was a great imperative for them to really get something special. And so the one I really remember, we drank everything, all the Romney Contis and that sort of stuff. They weren't stupid priced then. They're okay. Like Granger was $120 in a restaurant.
Wow.
So my budget was $150
Well,
a bottle, which was great in those days. And a bottle of a Penfold 60A, a 62 Cabernet Shiraz blend.
Yeah.
And it blew me away. It was just one of the greatest wines I've ever had. I'm obviously not the only one who thinks that, because they're about 17 grand or something now at auction if you can find one.
Yeah.
I drank that every day for a week at lunch because I really liked it. And I took a couple home to have with pizza takeaway, right?
I hope it wasn't Pizza Hut or something like that.
No, it was just a little Mossman takeaway joint,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was probably drunk when I took it home too. So, it was like pizza and great wine is a good combination. Just a margarita.
Yeah.
You don't need fancy food,
Yeah.
You need something, a loaf of bread, nice bottle of wine, bit of cheese maybe, whatever.
Definitely.
So that's the one that really hits my memory, is thinking like Australian wine can be this good.
Was that the kind of inflection point for you going, yeah, this is what I want to do?
No. The inflection point for me was that I knew I was burning out.
Yeah.
I knew what I wanted to do wasn't what I was doing. It was just a means to an end.
Yeah.
It was a great way to get paid a lot of money for a guy who didn't have a lot of skill. Right? Akin to a lot of the IT guys that came up in the early days who were just, computer nerds who were the only guys who had this knowledge, and they were all of a sudden worth fortune, right? Because, everyone wanted their knowledge. So, it was a great way for me. And obviously with my expense account, I just thought, this is terrific.
Awesome.
And I like the idea of living in the country.
Yeah.
I like the idea of traveling the world. And I like the idea of having chefs as best mates.
Definitely.
So this worked for me. So.
Awesome.
Food, wine, travel.
Yeah, we'll delve into that a bit more. Next question. What was the last wine that you've had?
Well, God, I sound like a Penfolds man. I had a 1970 bin 128 2 nights ago. And I was blown away by how good that was. So everyone poo-poos the big houses.
Yeah.
They make some amazing wines. And I've been guilty of poo-pooing them too. So,
Yeah.
credit where it's due.
Yeah.
1970s, probably one of their lowest range of wines, and it was terrific.
Fantastic. Next one. A person, past or present, they would love to have a bottle of wine with. And also what bottle?
La Lou Bislois, anything she makes.
Mm.
It's just a great skill. Henri Jayer,
Yeah.
something with him. Philip Jones.
Yeah.
Bass Phillip,
Wow.
something from when I worked there. You know,
Terrific.
good conversationalist,
Yeah.
great wine.
Terrific. Next one, favorite grape varietal?
Well, it's probably Pinot, but I'm also in love with Nebbiolo and Chardonnay.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Is that coming from your love of Burgundy as well?
Well, that was my first love, yeah.
Yeah.
When I went to this restaurant that Serge owned, we were going to do a world tour of different wines. We got to Burgundy and I just said, stop there, boys. I'm very happy here, right?
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, most people say that.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay, next one, unique food and wine pairing. You mentioned the classics around pizza and Cabernet.
I was about to say pizza and really expensive old Cabernet Shiraz blends. Look, I don't know. I'm a very plain eater.
Yeah.
I know. I like very simple things. The other night I was at a restaurant in Melbourne called Scopri.
Yeah.
And I just had a lovely Barolo. You know, I don't like to mix up food and wine too much. I'm very old fashioned. You know, I'm very staid.
Yeah.
Not a fan of big outlier type wines. They haven't appealed to me.
Okay. Last question. People getting into the wine world, any advice you'll kind of give them?
Yeah, drink the best wine you can. That was my advice from Philip Jones. Yeah. Find the best wine you can. Drink the best wine you can. Otherwise, you're kidding yourself.
Yeah.
You start drinking stuff, think, oh, that's good. And drink your own stuff and think, oh, I'm good. Then you go back to drinking the greatest wines of the world and you think, well, I'm actually not that good.
Yeah.
You know? So, yeah, wherever you can. And it's very hard these days. It's like kids trying to get into the housing market. Yeah. Wine's so expensive. On the other hand, there's people in Australia, the United States, New Zealand, and I'm sure in South America as well, making great wines. You just got to do some hunting. You know? A little bit of study wouldn't hurt, but more important than that is your palate.
You mentioned palate as well. Do you think that was just through when you were having all those fantastic wines at that restaurant, or was it something that you've developed, or you always had it?
No, I've had no idea, and I'm still learning. I'm very lucky. I've got a barrel importation business in Burgundy. This is Henri Jair's family, and they have some of the best wines I've ever tried in my life in their cellar. And the more you drink those wines, the more you understand, the more you know what you're aiming for.
Fantastic. That's the quickfire questions.
It's the quickfire questions. We threw in a few more in there as well, just for a bonus round as well. But we do want to learn a bit more about yourself and Savaterre, where we are today. You were mentioning there you worked in the finance industry, and then now you're a winemaker.
I did a lot of things.
Right.
I've done a lot of different careers. I'm easily bored. Right.
That jump is, and maybe you took a few steps in between. What made you go, all right, finance is enough. I think I can get into the wine industry. How did you start working with, you worked with Philip Jones? And, how did that come
about? Him up.
You just asked the question.
Yeah. He said, meet me for a drink in Sydney.
Yeah.
He said, why do you want to do that? You know, and I said, well, blah, blah, blah. And he said, look at me. I got a hole in my shoe.
Yeah.
You know, I'm broke.
Yeah.
Da, 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 da. And I just told him, look, I'm just keen. I can't help myself. And we, funnily enough, had a background in the electronics that goes with that, because Philip Jones was involved in developing what's called the Hoot and Holler system for financial broking. So he's like some sort of engineer with sound, and you know, who's involved in the development of mobile phone technology as well. And so we had a bit to chat about, and he knew all the guys I worked with, knew all the tech guys.
Yeah.
And he just said, listen, come work with me. You know, you'll hate it. I'll make you do all the shit jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I said, okay.
So what age were you when you made that change?
I was about 36.
Was it a tough choice? Because you had a pretty good life in finance though, right?
Oh, yeah, but it was killing me.
Yeah.
It wasn't a hard choice, you know. And they sacked me, which really made it easy.
Made it easier.
Yeah, I was going to work for another 6 months before I came and developed this.
Yeah.
And they sacked me, so that was like, great.
Was there a reason why you picked Phil Jones and not any other Penfolds or something?
Well, you'd be lost in Penfolds. It's such a big organisation. You know, Philip was a one-man band with a couple of guys from Vietnam helping him. And I just admired his wines. I'd never seen anything like that in Australia. It was the closest I'd ever seen to the Rousseaus and those great French wines that I was used to drinking. So, well, what's this guy know?
How long were you at Bass Phillip for?
Oh, just one vintage. Just one vintage.
And was the end goal to gain experience so that you could set up your own winery?
Yeah,
that was
I'd
always
bought this, you know.
Ah.
So I'd looked around the world for 10 years for a vineyard site. I knew I had to exit the I knew I couldn't go on doing what I was doing.
So you were looking around the world at 26 then?
36.
No, 36
No,
already.
26.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. You had the vision already.
Well, probably a bit, not quite 26, probably about 28, I think. But anyway, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know, I knew that I had to have an exit strategy because, you know, I was just exhausted in this job, you know.
Yeah.
I was flying around the world all the time. Back when business class seats were like that, not flat, you know. So you wake up, you slid out of your chair on the way to London or wherever you're going, and you're constantly tired.
Yeah.
It was a pretty unhealthy lifestyle. I had a young family and I was studying, you know.
So you had that experience there, and then I read a lot about how you basically ventured across all of Australia to find
all over the world.
Region, all over the world.
All over the world. So the trouble is, when you go to a wine region, all the good sites are taken.
Yeah.
Right. All the locals know the good sites. Beechworth wasn't a wine region. And I tasted wines from Rick at Giaconda, and I tasted wines from Barry and a couple of the guys like that. And I thought, you know, why isn't this place on the map?
Yeah.
You know, this is world class. And even when I found the place and trespassed and got the farmer to finally subdivide a bit for me, which took forever, I still thought there must be a nuclear dump here or something. Why isn't more people bought here? You know?
Yeah.
Anyway, they weren't into it. Now things have changed, and for 20 years I was wondering why people didn't think Beechworth was any good, and now it's really hitting its straps. There's a lot of really smart young people. There's a lot of international recognition. You know, we get a lot of customers from overseas now, a lot of inquiries from overseas, whereas before we're sitting here with lots of stock going, hope we can sell all this.
What is it about Beechworth? Like, it's my first time here.
Uh-huh.
What made you go? I know you'd tasted the wines from around the area. What makes it special?
Well, there's also a book by a man called Gladstone who basically discovered Margaret River. He was an agronomist, and he wrote a book about great vineyard sites he thought would be good in Australia. And that was mentioned in that, and had all the data on it. I thought, okay. So I got a soil map and a altitude map, and I put them across each other. And I thought, well, there's one big ridgeline which you've driven along it, stops there, goes all the way up there, and all what I consider the great Chardonnay growing vineyards are on this, and it's the soil.
Right.
It's the soil. You know, basically there's an extinct volcano out there, and this is all the magma, the lava, whatever, that's just decomposed over millions of years, and that's what it's growing in, a very well-drained medium with lots of minerals in it. So there's nothing special about us. It's the soil.
Was there ever any kind of close calls, like international? There's always that lure of like living somewhere else and making it there. Was there any thoughts around? I know Burgundy's pretty much difficult.
Not really. One vintage a year is enough for me.
Yeah,
it's tiring. It's exhausting. When I travel now, I go when they're not having vintage, because I want to talk to the winemaker when he's not in a shit mood.
Yeah,
right. When he can talk, when we can talk philosophy, and we can drink a few old bottles. The philosophy is more important than plunging a cap on a vat. You know, I can do that anywhere, and that really, there's no real secrets to winemaking.
Yeah,
what's the secret is how you grow and the elevage. You know, the bit in the middle is just a process.
Yeah,
I mean, you can tweak it. Yeah, but it's not rocket science.
So you mentioned, you were here 96 and 20 years, it wasn't really coming to the fore in terms of Beechworth. What's really changed though? Is it
just time, better? I think.
Yeah, time.
Just time, more exposure, more people. I mean, people like Rick and Barry, Stephen Morris, they've always been well known, but they just didn't have enough stock. So, not enough people got to see it. And then people like Julian Castagna, myself, and a whole bunch of younger people now that have come in. The guy from Centio, Domenica, all these guys, Traviati, have all really been throwing a lot of passion and money at it, they're going without stuff to make wine. I've lived in a shed for 20 years, right?
Wow.
It's a nice shed, but it's a shed.
Yeah.
And while we're talking, we've got some fantastic wines that we have in front of us. So this is the Savaterre 2019 Chardonnay. Yep. We were curious. We couldn't find anything online. Savaterre, why didn't you give it that name? What's the meaning behind it?
Well, after 8 years of selling nothing, I had to sell some wine, and I didn't have a name. And Smiths are a little interesting. And there was a Smith's vineyard in Beechworth, which made me laugh. But Savaterre is the name of my father's property in the United States, where I used to live on Chesapeake Bay. So that was just under my nose the whole time. So I thought, well, there you go. We have no idea what it means.
Yeah.
It's a part of the world that's rich in history. So the wars of independence, Civil War, all in that part of the world. We think it was a French word that the English started spelling as it sounded. It makes no sense as it's spelled now.
Which part of the US is that?
Virginia, right on Chesapeake Bay.
Yeah.
Right where the first fleet came in.
So the 2019, is there any significant stories, notes that we should be calling out to listeners?
Just a nice vintage, just a standard nice vintage. Normally we'd have this open for a couple of hours or at least an hour.
So one thing it says, like, you always kind of aspire to that kind of Burgundian style. For the novices, what does it actually mean?
Well, it's not really a Burgundian style that I aspire to. I aspire to a type of winemaking that is, well, I don't want to call it natural winemaking because I object to most of those wines, but it's certainly a no-frill style. We just press the wine into the barrel and let it make itself. It sits there for 2 winters in barrel. We assemble it all together. We're not trying to make it something else. We're trying to make it just what the vineyard will deliver. And be a reflection of where it's from, a reflection of the year, and hopefully a reflection of the passion and dedication of the people who work the vines.
So this is a Chardonnay. You mentioned before there's 3 separate plots. Is this from a certain plot or is just a mix?
Well, it's a mix.
Yeah.
So that's the original vineyard there. The vineyards, I should probably tell you, too, are different to most Australian vineyards. They're close planted, about 8,000, 9,000 vines a hectare. When I first came and did that, everybody just laughed at me. And now they're all emulating it. So that's a nice compliment. But I was copying Philip Jones and he was saying, I'm copying Europe. And, there's no real need to reinvent the wheel. It works quite well. And all the greatest wines I'd ever had had come from those sorts of vineyards. So I thought, well, if I'm wrong, I'll cut every second vine out.
Yeah.
But I wasn't wrong. And I noticed the really smart Americans were going down that road as well and getting great results.
Just to educate us and also the viewers as well. So what does it actually do, the close planting of the vines? There's
a lot of theories, but I think the most important thing is that it lowers the crop load on the vine. So instead of having, 2 or 3 kilograms of fruit per vine, we have less than a kilogram per vine. So we can get things ripe. And it does seem to affect the texture and the length of the wine, the intensity. And they're the great 4 things about wine. Yeah. Aroma, texture, intensity, and length are the things you have to really look for in a great wine.
The texture of this wine is quite, what's the term? Viscous. So it's got some great body to it. I was going to say voluptuous. But
Well, that's the difference between, I think, when you go from a village wine to a Premier Cru to a Grand Cru, it's just intensity and texture.
Yeah.
This spends almost 2 years on lees. It's on the fine lees in the barrel. They don't get moved out of barrel their whole life. They're all fermented with natural yeast that just come in on the grapes.
Yeah.
They can take as long as they like to ferment. I've still got stuff from this year fermenting. It's not a stressful thing to me. Most people have to have their wine out in the market within 8-9 months. So it is stressful, right? Yeah. It's got to be finished and out and ready to drink. We release our wine when they're ready. It's that simple.
Actually feels like a really nice time to drink it because it does have that kind of, it's like that mellowed out, that texture to it, but has this kind of charged intensity.
Well, what it does, it's been quite a lovely thing to find, is that instead of getting blousy as they get older, like a lot of Chardonnays do, they get more minerally and tight. So, I've got wines here from 2000, 2001, 2002. They're still drinking beautifully. They haven't fallen over. They've gotten darker in colour.
Yeah.
You've seen a progression in terms of flavours. But, if you got a Burgundy that looked like that, you think, well, that's in good condition, which is rare these days for a white Burgundy, which is annoying.
How do the Savaterre wines age as well?
Yeah, very well. All the wines from around here age very well.
Yeah.
It's very, there's no rocket science.
Yeah. Is that because of the fruit, because of the soils?
Yeah, the intensity of the fruit and the acid profile. I mean, there's only 2 things, maybe 3 in white wine that you can actually rely on to protect it for longevity. And that's acid is the main one. You've got to have good natural acid. You can add sulfur, which is the old Burgundies, which gave them great longevity. And phenolics to a degree, that grip on the finish, which I've I like. You know, a lot of people don't like that, but for me, that's the mark of a great Burgundy. It's got a little bit of grip on the finish, and that gives it ageability.
It does remind me a bit of Burgundy, like of the little kind of that I've had. But yeah, I love that kind of, I say, that kind of charge intensity really coming through the mid palate of it.
Well, it should be savoury.
Yeah.
You know, get the saliva going. Make you
definitely.
think, I want something to eat now. Yeah.
Love it.
And we're fortunate to taste a few different vintages here. So this one here is the 2021 Savaterre Chardonnay. It's a great opportunity to try across different years.
The thing is, though, they're all made exactly the same way.
Mm.
So you're really seeing the net effect of the season, not any winemaker artifact.
So what's the difference between the 19 and the 21 in terms of seasonal varietal?
Yeah, 21 was cooler, wetter, longer hang time, probably higher acid. I can't remember the figures.
On the nose, the kind of toasted bread kind of smell on the 19 is a bit more prominent.
You're going to get that brioche-ness developing as it ages, you know, which I really like. You see it in champagne as it gets older.
Mm.
That's called autolysis, and it happens in the barrels after 9 months. But you know, autolysis can't happen under 9 months in barrels, and most people don't have that sort of time to do that.
So a lot of it, you said, mentions because of the soils. The soils here, is it granite over clay, is it?
It's granite over granite.
Granite, is it?
There's a little bit of clay, but it's not till you get way down.
Yeah.
You know, so it's tough on young vines because they've got to get down a long way before they can hit any sustained moisture. And you know, we do irrigate them when they're young if they need it.
Tough for vineyard work as well.
Tough on your back because the vines are quite low as well.
What do you think that the soils do in terms of this Chardonnay, in terms of the granite though? Is it more that mineral texture you kind of mentioned before?
It's funny, isn't it? Because it's very minerally soil.
Yeah.
And people automatically think that translates to minerally wine.
Yeah.
The scientists have proven that's not the case.
Yes.
But, and that term minerality is a difficult one, but I use it all the time. And I think it's a good descriptor. Look, yes, I mean, you can go over there. You can see a vineyard there. Once you get down lower and into the flatter country, the wines don't have that.
Mm.
When they're grown on silt or river flats, you don't get that minerality, for want of a better word. I think it's probably acid.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's an old saying that the Romans had that Bacchus loves the hills, right?
Yeah.
You know, you taste a wine from the same vineyard, you taste the flats, you taste the hills are much nicer in terms of quality.
Is there still much experimentation though in terms of vineyards, where to plant?
It's all experimentation here, except for maybe the Grand Jus vineyard, which friends of mine, Peter and Donna, have got up here, which is an old vineyard, which was producing wine a long time ago and winning awards in London. And he's just done a magnificent job redoing it. And I hope you guys are going to go see that place. It's amazing. He's redone it, you know, individually staked vines.
Yeah.
You know, the wine coming out of there is amazing and the site's amazing, you know. And so Beechworth has a long history of that. But people didn't really drink wine in Australia. They drank fortified and beer. So they kind of died out. Not so much hit by phylloxera as much, but just a lack of markets. They sold most of their wine to London.
So we talked about the soils, we talked about the vines, the grapes. The other part you mentioned was quite big is what you do inside there as well.
Well, it's allowing itself to do its thing, right? The French call it elevage, which means it's upbringing. A lot of people think that's a passive phase, but it's a very active phase, you know. And if you give it time and you don't sulphur it and you let it do its thing, it's like tightrope walking. You know, the greatest results are from that sort of thing when you're walking close to the edge. And we had plenty of failures. Don't think I'm some sort of superhero. Yeah. We've had plenty of failures. And I still have failures. But when you get it right and things work, it's worth the effort. It's worth the risk.
Yeah.
So, you know, for a man who doesn't gamble, I've turned into the ultimate gambler, the farmer, you know.
Didn't you kind of gamble during your finance times?
No, I didn't. I was a broker. I won everything.
We're going to travel through time. We're going to go to 2022 now. Chardonnay. How was 2022 as a year?
Wet, cold. You'll see that's more reduced than the other wines. And I've got a theory about that, but I don't know if it's true. So
What's your
normally
theory?
we would open this up for about an hour to reduction blow off. Reduction's great because it maintains all those subtle aromas, you know, hiding underneath.
Yeah.
Once it blows off And it's like a complexing effect, you know. You get that graphite-y, you know, gun smoke sort of thing going on, you know. Too much is too much. But, you know, these things breathe off. If they don't breathe off, it's a problem.
We noticed, I was talking to Jason last night and said that it feels like it is a bit of a trend that's coming through. I don't know whether we just never picked it up before, but that kind of reductiveness through a lot of the...
Well, the vintages 20, 21, 22, 23 were wet. And my theory, and it's probably backed up by some scientist who knows what he's talking about, is that the vines aren't getting enough nitrogen because, you know, when they start off, they're almost waterlogged. You know, I had to spray by helicopter this year. We just couldn't get in there even with quad bikes. It was so wet. 10 inches of rain, then 8 inches of rain. And this soil drains like really well. But when you get that much water, it has to still run through the soil. So it's great. You can get the tractor down halfway and then there's a lake down there. You know, it's like, it's great. I can get it down there, but now I'm stuck.
Yeah.
You know, so we didn't want to do that.
So lack of nitrogen.
Lack of nitrogen getting into the vines, causing the yeast to struggle during fermentation. You know, I can put nitrogen into them, but I don't particularly want to unless I have to.
Yeah.
You know, I want them to use the nitrogen from the site to project, you know, what the site's about. So that's that tightrope we walk through again, you know.
And also a representative of that kind of season as well, right?
Yeah. But, you know, you still worry.
Yeah.
You still worry. You still want, you know, control, but no, you got to let it run its course. You got to let it do its thing if you're going to be true to the terroir.
Yeah.
You do have to step in sometimes, but, you know, I try not to.
Well, I think the thing we noticed was that there'd be the wines with the reductive notes, but that flintiness is basically everything that's there. Like the fruit doesn't really shine, which is absolutely different to what we're shining here, what we're tasting here. You can see the fruit kind of absolutely popping out.
Well, that's the thing about a great site. It should have power straight away, right? I mean, you look at these Coast Jury wines.
Yeah.
They're very similar to the sort of 22s where they're quite smoky and gunflinty and sometimes a bit too much for me. But they've always got that power of fruit in their upper level ones, right? Their lower level wines sometimes don't quite see that much fruit, but they're always beautifully made. But it's a style. Yeah. And you can make that style. I mean, it's very fashionable, say in the Yarra these days, to make that style because, you know, they think, well, that's what Burgundy does. It looks like Burgundy. I've got to say I like a little bit of it, but too much is over the top. Yeah. And I've worried about this wine many a time. Is that too much? Is that too much? It just goes through stages.
We've seen the progression through the years, so it's going to evolve and I'm assuming over time that will balance out.
We hope so.
Yeah. Okay. That's where the gambling comes in.
Yeah, we hope so. Yeah. I've only been doing this 20 years or so, right?
Well, we've gone through 3 vintages and I've got a better appreciation of what time does to these wines. I think
I love that because there's also a better appreciation of the different seasons as well, how it impacts the wine. We talked about, that 22, how it's a bit more reductive it is, but the fruit really just still powers through and provides a balance.
I think you're really seeing vintages here, not actual time.
Yeah.
You know, because they're all pretty much how they were released at this stage.
Yeah.
Settled down a little bit, but we haven't really got into the aging process within those yet.
How was it 23?
Another wet, tough year.
Similar to 22?
Tougher. I spent a lot of time stressing about those, but they may be the best yet. I sound like Murray Tyrrell. And there's nothing wrong with Murray Tyrrell, by the way. He was a great character. We're lacking characters these days. It may be the greatest wine I've ever made, but we'll see. You know, it's still going through its stuff. Once it hits bottle, it goes a little crazy. My wife won't let me taste it now because apparently I come in every year all depressed, you know, telling her how I've stuffed it up and it's terrible wine and I'm hopeless. And then I'll come back 6 months later and go, I'm a genius. It's great. You know?
Yeah.
So she said, just leave it alone for 6 months, okay? Because you always get depressed, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what we're in the process of doing now. It tasted great before I put it in the bottle.
Yeah.
I haven't tasted it since it's been in bottle.
Yeah. I think that stress is actually really important because that pushes you to try and make the best that you can. So,
well, we're always trying.
Yeah.
We're always trying. We're obsessive. I mean, that's what great winemakers do. They try and improve 1%, 0.5% every year. Just those tiny increments are a lot.
You mentioned that you don't do that as much vineyard work now as well.
No. John's in charge of all that.
But how involved are you now in terms of the whole operation?
Oh, I walk through it every day and check everything. but John's onto it.
Yeah.
I did it for years, and my back's so bad now because they're such low vines, and I didn't have enough money to pay people.
Yeah.
So I did it all myself.
Yeah.
I didn't have nice machines. I had to do the old French thing, trim them by hand, and do it by hand, and it just wears you out.
Yeah. And then the winemaking, very much involved as well still?
Oh, I do all the winemaking, yeah. Yeah, I can't give that to anybody yet.
That's the part that I'm really struggle to fathom. Like for us being IT based, yes, we had a formal education in that. That's how we could pick that up. That wasn't where you started out. Did you go through any educational process to pick up the winemaking? Was it all hands-on experience?
Oh, no, I did a 7-year part-time bloody degree at Wagga Wagga in Charles Sturt, yeah. This is back in the days, pre-mobile phones.
Yeah.
You had to send your assignments in by mail. They'd mark them, and 6 months later you get it back and, you got a B. And you're thinking, well, where'd I go wrong? I can't even remember 6 months ago. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
It was really weird doing a distance education like that, spending a couple of weeks on campus every year.
Yeah, okay.
It's a great way to meet a lot of winemakers.
We've gone through the Chardies. What we've got here is the 2022 Pinot Noir Reserve from Savaterre.
So tell us about the 22 Pinot.
Well, a tough year in terms of getting volume.
Weather-wise?
Yeah, it was cold and wet and miserable. It was like a real Burgundy vintage, right? But the grapes that I did get were magnificent. And it was the most Pinot-like wine I think I've ever made. There was bugger all of it. And I thought, you know what? I haven't made a reserve wine for 26 years now. I think I will do that.
When you say bugger all, how much is bugger all?
5 barrels. Yeah, that's nothing.
Yeah.
That's not enough to live on.
We were talking about before your kind of wine education at Charles Sturt. Now, if you're kind of looking back at a 28-year-old Kepp now, what would you say to him?
Don't think you know it all, mate. You're going to stuff up a lot. Surround yourself with knowledgeable people. I was very lucky. A lot of people took me under their wing and were very kind to me, but I was quite arrogant and thought I knew it all. And nature proved me wrong many times. Quite a humbling thing, but it was good. It's a nice path to tread.
Yeah.
It's a nice way to learn. It was an expensive way to learn. It was a nice way to learn. I mean, I had a lot of help. I've got Philip Jones helping me these days. We chat about stuff. He sold his vineyard, and he comes and we talk about concepts and have you tried this? Have you tried that? Yeah, I've tried that. Oh, I haven't tried that. Well, that might be a good idea. People with a great range of knowledge and friendship too. You make great friends.
Yeah, I guess you said you've done this for 20 years. Like, in reflection, how has that journey been?
Quick.
Really
Really quick. I'm still building. I haven't finished my winery in 20-something years. All your money goes into building. I get concrete jealousy when I go to someone and says, oh, look at that concrete. There's 800 grams worth of concrete here. Look at that. I follow steel trucks down the highway and think, oh, there's $250,000 worth of steel on that truck. Much to my wife's annoyance. They're the simple things. I get quite worked up about second and third generation winemakers doing a shit job because they've got all the concrete and they've got all the steel and they've got all the stuff and they still stuff it up, and you think your parents did a better job than you. You're not trying, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway.
So you're still very much involved in the winemaking. Do you think there'll be a point in time where you'll start to let go of the reins?
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so. I want to spend a lot of time overseas, I'm very interested in Barolo, Gattinara, those sorts of places, We've planted a little bit of Nebbiolo here. I never thought it would work in Beechworth, but, some of the guys are producing some really nice stuff. And the stuff coming off Granite just looks insane, and I didn't think that would work. And then I got involved in the Gattinara wines up north of Italy, thinking, they're just amazing. Yeah. They're the most exciting wines for me in the world, right?
So do you have any new plantings at the moment, though?
Yeah, they've got I got about 5 or 6 rows up there that when Traviati hurt himself and had to sell his vineyard, I said, the people who buy it might turn into a llama farm or something or other, Can I get some cuttings? And he was very nice. He said, yep. So we had a big chat and he's been very helpful. And he has a great insight to making Nebbiolo. And so we planted those and we'll see. We got our first crop this year.
I think Kep before mentioned like this is his most Pinot like, but I think it's like more Burgundian Pinot.
Oh, very, yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. In that, yeah, that's the sort of like that undergrowthy,
Stemmy, twiggy, kind
Yeah.
of branchy.
yeah. That's the stuff, I make wine I like, because at the end of the day, if I can't sell it, I've got to drink it.
Mm.
And that's the bottom line. And that's how I've always been, because I didn't think I'd be able to sell it.
It's very savoury.
Yeah, that's how it should be, right? It, a lot of people make sort of tutti frutti Pinot, which is great. It's a great summer drink, but it's not a food wine. It's not a serious wine.
Wow.
And people are paying serious money for these wines. They want serious wines.
Yeah.
They want wines with ageability, and they want them to be delicious. A lot of my clients don't ever see the wines before they buy them, so I've got to deliver.
Yeah. They trust you, right?
Well, that drain over there has seen a lot of wine go down that I don't think's up to standard, So that's, you can't treat people like idiots, and I'd be embarrassed if one of my wines went out and they weren't happy.
Is that something that's kind of inbuilt into Keppell Smith, or is it something that you've learned saying, hey, that's not good enough?
Yeah, look, I think it's just part of who I am. I'd be embarrassed.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have a reputation to uphold. You want to show people your best. That's the way it should be.
Well, that's it. That's why it took so long to sell wine, because I wanted to get up to a stage where, I would like it,
And so we might move on to the Sagrantino, Maurizio Sagrantino. So it's a 2018 from Savaterre. We had a Sagrantino a couple of months back. It's probably very rare for us to try it.
Well, it's a rare thing in Australia. The reason it's called Maurizio is a beautiful friend of mine who's now passed away. It was called Maurizio Uge, and he ran Aquila Wines in Melbourne. Back in the day when no one could sell Italian wines, he was just working his little heart out. No one wanted to know about Barolo. No one wanted to know about anything. They all wanted Burgundy. And he sent me to Barolo and gave me a lot of connections, and I was treated very well. And I learned a lot through him. And so when he passed away, I dedicated this wine to him. He introduced me to Capri and these people in Montefalco, which, by the way, is a magnificent place to go. Montefalco, just have a holiday. Beautiful.
Whereabouts is it?
Montefalco, in Perugia, near Assisi. It's like Tuscany would have been before the Americans and the Germans found it. It's a big spelt growing area, but castles on hills and things like that. Really amazing. So Sagrantino is the most tannic wine in the world. We don't want to make it that way. We want to make it a little bit more approachable. It used to be the wine of kings and popes. They never used to sell it outside of Italy. And for us, it's just a bit of fun. I've got about 3 rows of it,
It's definitely interesting wine, but trying to put my finger on it. It's not big tannins, but again, very, very savoury.
For me, it's a cross between the great Sangioveses and the great Barolos. It's got the richness in the middle, but it's still got that acid and tannin. It's kind of in between.
Yeah.
The Italians make them as massive wines, and I don't know if that's traditional Robert Parker, but it's certainly appealed to the Americans for a time. Now I think they're pulling back a bit.
Yeah.
It's the wine you have with a piece of Wagyu.
How's Sagrantino kind of growing here on the granite soils?
Well, it's the worst vine to grow for me. Mind you, I think the Italians sent us all the virus clones anyway. It's the only one we let sprawl. We can't train it. It's this wild Italian thing that just won't be tamed. So we just let it do its thing. We just crop in it and just come by it. If it gets ripe, it only gets ripe once every 2 or 3 years because it doesn't get warm enough, even with low crop levels.
Yeah. So you wouldn't do this every single year?
No. Most years we don't pick it.
Yeah.
It's just not ripe.
Which vineyard is it on?
It's that west-facing vineyard over there. So we want the heat on it.
Yeah, okay, got it. I mean, it's still got the grippiness to it, but it's nothing like a Barolo or anything else like that. It's present. It's just not.
We want people to be able to drink it under 20 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What's that? 2018?
Yeah, 18.
Okay, so 6, nearly 7-year-old wine, right?
It seems, I don't know. It seems like a stupid comment to make, but it does taste very Italian.
I was just about to say, it's got that Italian to it. It's got that dustiness. It's got that smell, and that was really pleasing to me that it carried through from the grape, It wasn't a contrivance. It's just part of what it was.
Yeah. It's I got this kind of I don't know, dirtiness, but in a good sense.
Yeah. I call it dustiness. It's got this rusty, dusty sort of aroma and taste, and not in a spoilish way, but just in an Italian way.
Yeah.
I think that'll be a compliment to the Italians out there.
It is.
I love Italian
Absolutely,
wine,
it's a compliment.
I'm not saying it in a bad way.
Yeah, absolutely.
For me, I'm trying to corner the Barolo market because I think it's going to go like the Burgundy market. It's still cheap, believe it or not.
Another big thing I hear about all the time is like barrel selection. Is that also big for you as well?
Oh, well, it's huge.
Yeah.
It's huge. And it's why I started our importing business because whilst we had some really good barrels in Australia, I found what I thought were better ones. And I still buy some of the ones, from Australia that the other guys bring in. But Henri Jair's family have one called Cavin. And I started importing them for myself and just ended up running a business because someone else wanted some, someone else wanted a couple, da. They said, do you want to put it in your container? Yeah. And after a while, they said, look, you just want to be the distributor. And I thought, what a great idea.
Yeah.
Until I started having to pay for all the tax when they come in and all that sort of stuff. It's a huge amount of money, right? Bring in barrels. But, I get the barrels I want.
Yeah. How much science is in that, though, finding the right barrels for your plot of land, for your grapes?
Well, it's a lot like the Burgundian winemakers. You find a maker and a style that you like. So these barrels are always from the finest oak in Burgundy. So straight away, you're buying expensive wood. Then they age them for so many years out in the middle of nowhere, snow, heat, yada, yada. And then they've got a different process, like a different house style. So these guys have got your standard barrel, like they'll just put a fire in and do it however you like, Or they have what's called an EP toast, which is expression profound, but in a French way.
Yeah.
Which is a small fire, a little tiny thing with oak chips. And they'll have a fire going there for 45 minutes for the toast I use. And so the inside of the barrel is not even blackened.
Yeah.
It's like grey maybe.
Yeah.
But the heat's penetrating the wood. And it's that heat penetration that changes the molecular structure and gives me what I want. I don't want that vanilla-y flavour.
Yes.
I don't want that charry flavour. I just want what the oak will do. And it's a weird thing to say. I've never seen oak focus a wine before. And these barrels focus the terroir. And they really say, poof, And that's what I want.
Yeah.
And it sort of lifts it up. It magnifies the wine. I know that sounds weird, but, I'd never seen that before.
Yeah.
I'd seen wines that look good. I've seen wines that have a nice oak taste. And oak taste is like catnip for middle-aged men. They love that stuff, right?
Yeah.
But I don't like the taste of oak. You'll get a little bit in it, and I don't mind that. But long as you've got the fruit to match it, so down the track, that all comes together.
Balance again,
balance. It's all about balance.
Yeah.
What's the in terms of like we've had a Sagrantino now, are there other varieties you're looking to trial?
No. I'll buy them. I'll just buy the wine. No, I'm making about 3 varieties more than I should. I've got Pinot, Chardonnay, Shiraz, Sagrantino, and now I've got Nebbiolo.
Yeah.
So I'll probably chuck the Sagrantino out one day. It's just like too hard. I'm getting a crop every 4 or 5 years. Waste of my time, because there's a lot of inputs every year.
Right. Do you think climate change is going to push?
Well, climate change has been very unusual for us. I certainly, unlike Donald, I believe in climate change. But it hasn't been what I thought it would be in our very short time in this area. We've gone from 10 years of full-on dry drought to really wet, cool years. And the wet coolness is the result of climate change, I believe. We're getting back into a more interesting pattern. But like last week, we had 100 mils of rain, That's not usual.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got to learn to be smarter farmers and adapt our viticulture and hopefully our thinking.
What is smarter farming?
I was going to ask you. I'm still trying to figure that out. Well, it's how you handle, especially you saw that leaf plucking machine I had in the front of the tractor. I can think, okay, I think it's going to rain a lot. I want to open up the canopy and let the air through. Or I think it's going to be really hot. I want to shade the canopy. That machine gives me once I've rolled the dice, though, it's over.
Yeah.
So if I think, okay, it's going to rain and we're going to get botrytis and I want some air movement.
Yeah.
Shit. Put the machine on. Let's go through. Because if I've got to get people in here, that'll take 2 weeks to do. And it'll cost me $10,000 at least, right? The machine will do it in 2 days.
Yeah.
And I can do how much I want. If I go through and it's still too light, I'll take more off.
Yeah.
But, once it's off, they don't grow back.
I know.
So if it goes hot, then I'm buggered,
Yeah. And you don't really hedge your bets, right? Going through half.
Well, it's a commitment.
Yes.
It's like the bacon and eggs,
Yeah.
The pig's committed,
Yes.
The chicken's got an interest,
Yes.
I haven't heard that one. That's a new one.
The philosophy for Savaterre kind of going forward, like is it you pretty much set in your ways in terms of how we're going to go forward with Savaterre?
I'm never set in my ways.
Mm.
I'm never. That's a big mistake to be set in your ways. I mean, it means you've stopped learning.
Yeah.
I'll never stop learning. And it's one of the reasons I love winemaking. It's one of the reasons I love fly fishing and things like that.
Yeah.
I'll never master it.
Yeah.
And I'm easily bored.
Yeah.
If I master something, I can't do it. And I'll never master this. And I'll never master fly fishing.
So we're at the end of 2024 at the moment, 2025, another year ahead of us. What's kind of in the future in 2025 that you're going to experiment, innovate? How are you going to change your philosophy and keep up to date?
Well, I'm not going to change my philosophy. I'm going to just, be the reed in the river. I'm just going to keep learning.
Yeah.
And try and, talk to smart people, go around the world, look at the best I can find. As I said to you, I've fallen in love with Gattinara and those sorts of wines. John and I will go to Italy and do intense research there, see what we're doing wrong, what we're doing right.
Yeah.
You can't directly transfer these things from country to country, but as I was saying before, philosophies are important. And they're the things you can talk to great winemakers about, Conter and all those sorts of guys. They'll talk to you about philosophy. If you ask them about clones, they're saying, well, what's the point of that? Your land's so different to my land. What works here may not work for you.
Yeah.
So going forward, we just want to keep learning, keep improving, keep trying to build the vineyard up, with as much organic matter and keeping it healthy. We have to live here too, which is why we don't like spraying nasty chemicals and things. And if you're smart, and we're very blessed with the climate, like in the Hunter Valley, it's very difficult to be organic there. It just rains at the wrong time. I've worked in the Hunter, it's tough, man. It's why Semillon's so good. They can bring it off before the rain comes, I've driven up there and seen whole crops just dripping off the vines because they couldn't get in there with tractors or harvesters, and everything's just rotting. It's a disappointing thing. So we're very lucky here. We normally have dry, non-humid autumns.
Beautiful.
Well, we're probably at the tail end of the interview here.
God, I hope so, boys. I'm hungry.
Yeah.
Did you have any last messages for our audience? Any key things you want them to know about Beechworth, Savaterre?
Yeah, come to Beechworth. Enjoy yourself. We're very blessed. The trouble is we're all very small, so it's worthwhile ringing a couple of weeks ahead or emailing and organising appointments because, the guy who gives you the tour of the winery is also the guy who probably jumps on the tractor. Yeah. So we're not blessed with a lot of staff. They're mum and dad type operations. Yeah. I don't mean they're amateurish, but I mean they're very, low input sort of places, and they're farmers. Yeah. So if you visit them, they're getting off a tractor and coming to see you. So, they can arrange that. But give them some time and, it'll work out better.
Yeah, got it. Perfect. Trent, any last messages?
I guess I'll echo Kep's thoughts there. Come visit Beechworth. The amazing wines here they're producing has been phenomenal. Like we've just been through this flight and I love it how you can kind of taste those seasonal variations. The Pinot kind of blows me away. I think that's kind of highlight for me in terms of that flight. Come to Beechworth, visit Kep. Get some Savaterre wines.
Yeah, absolutely. Kep, thanks so much for hosting us here. I've been listening to you speak, and I just think you're a man that you said you can't get things perfect, but I think you want to try. And
it obsesses me.
Obsessive. It's a good thing. Yeah. It sounds like you're the kind of person that wants to learn about everything and try and learn as much as you can. And you take a very macro, but you can go down to the micro view as well, which is inspirational. I mean, that whole jump from finance at that age and knowing where you want to be and achieving it is quite inspirational. So really appreciate you sharing the story and sharing these wines with us here. And so as we wind up here, that's us. Kep, again, thank you so much for joining us. As we like to say here, drink more, try more, learn more.